Alison Mack was born on July 29, 1982, in Stuttgart, Germany, to a father stationed there with the U.S. Army. The family relocated to California within her first year. As a teenager, she appeared in commercials and minor television roles. In 2001, at age 18, she was cast as Chloe Sullivan in the series Smallville and remained in the role for all 10 seasons through 2011. The part established her as a recognizable television actress with a steady income and public profile, centered on portraying a loyal, intelligent, supporting character. Mack first entered Xivim in 2006 after attending a 2-day JNS workshop, a women-focused program within the organization. Xivim had been founded by Keith Raniere in 1998 near Albany, New York, and operated as a paid self-help curriculum offering executive success training, personal development courses, and multi-level marketing elements that generated millions in revenue from members. Matt completed numerous courses, rose through the ranks, and became a prominent recruiter and instructor. In 2015, Raniere created a secret subgroup inside Xivim called DOSE, an acronym for Dominus Obsequious Sororium, which translates as Lord Master of the Obedient Female Companions. DOSE was structured as a strict pyramid with Raniere alone at the top as the only male participant. Mack held the position of first-line master directly beneath him and served as one of his primary deputies. Masters recruited slaves by presenting DOSE as an exclusive, all-female empowerment sorority designed to eliminate personal weaknesses. New recruits were required to submit collateral before initiation, including nude photographs and videos, written confessions of damaging personal secrets, financial commitments, or legal rights to assets. Masters retained this material and threatened its public release if orders were disobeyed. Once inside dues, slaves followed daily regimens that included calorie-restricted diets of 500 to 800 calories, chronic sleep deprivation, and mandatory tasks. These tasks encompassed unpaid labor for higher-ranking members and sexual assignments with Raniere, often described internally as special assignments. Masters, including Mack, directed slaves to initiate sexual contact with Raniere and to report details afterward. Slaves also transferred money and performed administrative work that benefited the organization. A central ritual in DOSE involved branding. Recruits were taken to private locations, stripped naked, held down by other members, and marked on the lower abdomen near the pubic bone with a cauterizing pen. The brand formed a symbol that incorporated Raniere's initials KR without the slave's prior knowledge of its meaning. Court records show Mack participated in planning and executing these ceremonies. In a recorded conversation with Raniere that she later provided to prosecutors, the two discussed the branding procedure in explicit detail, describing how women would be positioned and restrained. Mack had stated in a pre-arrest interview that she originated the branding concept. Mack leveraged her acting background to recruit. She approached young women, including aspiring performers and college students, using her Smallville fame to establish initial trust before introducing them to DOSE. One documented recruit was India Oxenberg, daughter of actress Catherine Oxenberg. Mack collected collateral from these women, enforced obedience, and assigned them directly to Raniere for sexual exploitation. By 2017, DOSE had approximately 100 to 200 members organized in slave master chains. Exposure began in 2017 when former members and journalists published accounts in major outlets, including the New York Times. These reports detailed the collateral system, branding, and sexual coercion. Federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of New York opened a racketeering investigation. On April 20, 2018, FBI agents arrested Mack at her Brooklyn residence. A federal indictment charged her with racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking conspiracy, and forced labor conspiracy. Prosecutors allege she recruited at least 6 women into DOSE, concealed Raniere's leadership role, obtained and retained collateral, and facilitated their sexual and labor exploitation for Raniere's benefit. Mack entered a not guilty plea at her initial appearance. On April 8, 2019, 1 month before Raniere's trial, she changed her plea to guilty on 1 count of racketeering conspiracy and 1 count of racketeering. In the plea agreement, she admitted to the core conduct: recruiting women under false pretenses of female empowerment, collecting collateral to coerce compliance, directing slaves to engage in sex acts with Raniere, and participating in the branding process. She began cooperating immediately, providing prosecutors with extensive proffers. Her cooperation included handing over an audio recording of her discussion with Raniere about the branding ceremony script. Prosecutors described this recording as crucial evidence introduced at Raniere's trial. She supplied additional details on dose, command structure, specific assignments given to slaves, financial flows, and Raniere's direct control over sexual and labor exploitation. Raniere's trial in 2019 ended in conviction on all counts. On October 27, 2020, he received a 120-year federal prison sentence. Mac's sentencing hearing took place on June 30, 2021, before U.S. District Judge Nicholas G. Garofis in Brooklyn Federal Court. Federal sentencing guidelines recommended 14 to 17.5 years imprisonment. Prosecutors filed a motion for a substantial downward departure, citing her substantial assistance, including the recording and other evidence that strengthened the case against Raniere. 6 written victim impact statements and 2 delivered in court described Mac as a predator who exploited trust, groomed vulnerable women, and enabled repeated sexual abuse. One victim compared Mac's role to that of Ghislaine Maxwell assisting Jeffrey Epstein and labeled her an evil monster and ongoing danger to society. In her allocution, Mac read a prepared statement acknowledging that she had thrown herself into Raniere's teachings, devoted her loyalty and resources to him, and that this devotion constituted the biggest mistake and greatest regret of her life. Judge Garofis rejected arguments for no prison time. He described Mac as an essential accomplice who willingly enslaved, destabilized, and manipulated other women when they were most vulnerable, and provided Raniere with sexual access he could not have achieved without her active participation. Garofis imposed a sentence of 36 months imprisonment on each count to run concurrently, a $20,000 fine, 3 years of supervised release, and 1,000 hours of community service. Mac reported to the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California. She served approximately 21 months before release on July 3, 2023, under Bureau of Prisons calculations that accounted for good conduct time and cooperation-related considerations. Following release, she has lived privately with no public professional activity or return to acting. In a November 2025 interview, she acknowledged for the first time publicly that she had capitalized on her celebrity status as a recruitment tool inside Exiviem, using it to persuade women to follow her directives. The case produced no further charges against Mac after her guilty plea and cooperation. Raniere remains incarcerated, serving his 120-year term. Mac's conviction stands as a completed federal racketeering matter tied directly to the documented operations of DOS. Victoria Vetri was born Victoria Cecilia Vetri on September 26, 1944, in San Francisco, California, to Italian immigrant parents. She attended Hollywood High School from 1959 to 1963 and studied art at Los Angeles City College. She began modeling and acting in her teens and was often cast in ethnic roles due to her Italian heritage. In 1962, she appeared uncredited in The Pigeon That Took Rome. In 1963, she played Ixubin in Kings of the Sun. In 1967, she played Helena Chavez in Chuka. Using the stage name Angela Dorian, she was named Playboy Playmate of the Month for the September 1967 issue and Playmate of the Year for 1968. She received $20,000 and a pink 1968 AMC Amex car. A nude photo of her with 3 other playmates was inserted into the Apollo 12 astronauts' cuff checklists by NASA pranksters. She appeared briefly in Rosemary's Baby in 1968 as Terry Giannoffrio, the character to whom Mia Farrow's Rosemary remarks that she looks like Victoria Vetri. In 1969, she signed a multi-picture contract with Warner Bros. 7 Arts and starred as Santa in When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth in 1970, refusing to dye her auburn hair blonde and wearing a wig instead. She appeared in Group Marriage in 1973 as Jan, and in Invasion of the Bee-Girls in 1973 as Julie Zorn. Her television credits under Angela Dorian include roles in The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet in 1962, Going My Way in 1962 Cheyenne, as White Bird in 1962, Hawaiian Eye in 1962, The Gallant Men in 1962, in 1963, Destry in 1964, The Magical World of Disney in 1964, The Bill Dana Show in 1964, Wagon, Train in 1964, in 1965, McHale's Navy in 1965, Bonanza in 1965, Perry Mason in 1965, Run for Your Life in 1966, The Man from UN SEAL E. In 1966, The Big Valley in 1966, Hogan's Heroes in 1967, Death Valley Days in 1967, Batman in 1968, The Courtship of Eddie's Father in 1969, The Pigeon TV Movie in 1969, Land of the Giants in 1970, Daniel Boone in 1970, Night Chase TV Movie in 1970, Mission Impossible in 1970, To Rome with Love in 1970, and Incident in San Francisco TV Movie in 1971. She posed topless again for Playboy in the April 1984 pictorial Playmates Forever Part 2. She met Bruce Rothgeb, a Los Angeles rock musician and former chef, in 1981 while he worked in an LA cafe. They married in 1987 in La Jolla, California. Vetri was close friends with Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski in the late 1960s. She had participated in threesomes with them and was scheduled to be at Tate's home on the night of the August 1969 murders, but stayed home due to illness. 2 weeks before the murders, she met Charles Manson at Tate's home, called him a weirdo, and believed he overheard her. She blamed herself for Tate's death, believing her comment triggered the killings. Los Angeles police watched her for 2 months afterward. Polanski gave her a Glock 9 Emir handgun for protection. Her fear of Manson persisted for decades. She turned white and shook whenever his name appeared in the news. Her acting career slowed after the early 1970s. She and Rathgeb lived quietly in a second-floor apartment at 7045 Hawthorne Avenue in West Hollywood. On October 16, 2010, at approximately 7 p.m., the couple argued inside the apartment. Rathgeb, who was under the influence of alcohol and methamphetamine, attempted to leave after Vetri accused him of cheating. He waited for the elevator when Vetri aimed the Glock and fired one shot into his back at close range. Rathgeb later stated he heard her mutter, no more Charlie," after the shot. He described her eyes as black and possessed and said she was totally emotionless. He recalled saying, "I love you. Please, you're not going to shoot me." A neighbor called emergency services. Police arrived and found Rathgeb in extremely critical condition with a gunshot wound to the upper body. The bullet lodged near his heart, and doctors could not remove it, leaving scars on his back and left side. Vetri initially told officers a drug dealer had shot him. She was arrested at the scene and charged with attempted murder. She was booked into custody on $1.53 million bail. Bruce Rathgeb remained hospitalized at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center for days. On October 21, 2010, Vetri pleaded not guilty in Los Angeles Superior Court. At a January 2011 preliminary hearing, Rathgeb testified that she quickly aimed and fired at me while he waited for the elevator. Judge Michael D. Obzug refused to reduce bail or downgrade the charge from attempted murder. Between January and September 2011, the charge was reduced to attempted voluntary manslaughter. On September 7, 2011, Vetri pleaded no contest to attempted voluntary manslaughter. The judge sentenced her to 9 years in state prison and ordered her to pay $70,000 to California's Victim Restitution Fund. She was incarcerated at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. While serving the sentence, she sent divorce papers to Rathgeb in 2016, which he signed, ending their 25-year marriage. She was released on parole in April 2018 at age 73 after serving approximately 7 years. Bruce Rathgeb stated in a 2018 interview that he took the bullet meant for Charles Manson, and that Vetri's mind had warped from decades of fear. He attended some court appearances but missed others due to health issues. The Manson-related delusion and fear were not raised at trial because of the plea agreement. Vetri has maintained a low-profile life since release with no public acting comeback, despite a 2018 report that she planned to return to the industry. She remains the only person charged or convicted in the October 16, 2010 shooting. Rothgeb recovered and has spoken publicly about the incident, describing his continued affection for her even after the shooting and occasional letter exchanges until 2013. All evidence, including the Glock handgun, the bullet casing, the initial false statement to police, and Rothgeb's testimony, linked directly to Vettry's actions during the domestic dispute. The case drew media coverage, contrasting her 1968 Playboy Playmate of the Year status and film roles in Rosemary's Baby and When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, with the 2010 attempted manslaughter conviction. No appeals or additional charges followed the sentencing. Vettry was 66 years old at the time of the shooting and 67 at sentencing. The parole release in April 2018 concluded her custody with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. The sequence of events ties the 1969 Tate murders and resulting Glock handgun directly to the 2010 shooting, through Vettry's long-term fear of Manson as described by Rothgeb. All court records, police reports, and medical records from Cedars-Sinai confirm the single gunshot wound, the domestic argument, and the immediate arrest. Vettry's full name variations, Victoria Vettry, Angela Dorian, and Victoria Rothgeb, appear consistently in arrest documents, plea records, and prison files. No other individuals were involved in the planning or execution of the shooting. The $70,000 restitution order was part of the final judgment entered September 7, 2011. The 9-year term ran from the date of sentencing, with parole granted after the standard calculation for good conduct and time served. Vettry's release in April 2018 at age 73 placed her back in the community at the conclusion of state supervision terms. She has issued no public statements since parole and maintains no verified social media or professional profiles as of the latest available records. The conviction stands as the sole criminal record associated with her post-1970s life. The investigation closed with the plea and sentencing containing all physical evidence from the apartment scene, including the handgun and casing. Rothgeb's hospital records documented the upper body entry wound and failed bullet extraction. The case required no further trials or retrials after the no contest plea. Vettry's Italian immigrant family background, Hollywood high school education, and art studies preceded her modeling breakthrough and Playboy recognition, which in turn led to the Warner Bros. Contract and starring role in When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth. Her television work spanned multiple series from 1962 through 1971 before the career decline. The marriage to Rothgeb in 1987 followed her meeting him in 1981 and preceded the 2010 incident by 23 years. The Glock 9 Nevamir used in the shooting originated from Polanski's gift after the 1969 murders. The muttered phrase, "No more Charlie," recorded in Rothgeb's account, linked the act to her Manson fixation. All facts align with Los Angeles Police Department reports, district attorney filings, and Superior Court minutes from 2010 through 2011. The parole in April 2018 ended the 9-year commitment imposed on September 7, 2011. Victoria Vettry's post-release life remains private, with no documented further legal issues or public appearances. Amy Rose Locane was born December 19, 1971 in Trenton, New Jersey, and raised in Lawrence Township, Mercer County as the only child of Richard and Helen Locane. She graduated from Villa Victoria Academy in 1989. Locane began acting at age 13 with a series regular role as Andrea Winger in the 1984-1985 television series Spencer, also known as Under One Roof, for 13 episodes. She appeared in additional television roles, including Karen in a 1985 Young People Specials episode and Bridget Frommer in a 1985 Special Treat episode. In 1988, she had a 3-episode role as Nancy in Hot House. Her feature film debut came in 1989 as Cheryl Anderson in Lost Angels. In 1990, at age 18, she was cast as Allison Vernon Williams opposite Johnny Depp in John Waters' Crybaby. In 1992, she joined the original cast of the Fox primetime soap opera Melrose Place as Sandy Louise Harling and appeared in 13 episodes before leaving the series. That same year, she played Sally Wheeler in School Ties, Subsequent film roles included Kayla in Airheads in 1994, Alex Marshall in Blue Sky in 1994, Kaylee in Criminal Hearts in 1995, Catherine Wheeler in Carried Away in 1996, Buddy Porter in Going All the Way in 1997, Nancy Alleman in Prefontaine in 1997, Beth in The Girl Gets Mo in 1997, Jennifer in Bongwater in 1998, Margaret Trelawney in Bram Stoker's Legend of the Mummy in 1998, and supporting parts in Implicated in 1999, Secretary in 2002, and Bad Karma in 2002. She performed in local community theater near Hopewell, New Jersey after retiring from major film work by 2005, with brief returns in short films Visiting and Coffee in 2009 and the 2020 film Cooties. Locaine married Mark Bovenizer in 2008, had 2 daughters born in 2007 and 2009, and divorced in 2017 on June 27, 2010 at 9:05 p.m. In Montgomery Township, New Jersey, Locaine was driving a Chevrolet SUV after consuming alcohol at multiple parties earlier that evening. Her blood alcohol content measured 0.23%, nearly 3 times the legal limit of 0.08%. She was traveling approximately 53 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone. Fred Seaman was driving a Mercury Milan at about 3 miles per hour while turning left into the driveway of the couple's weekend home when Locaine's vehicle struck it from behind. Helene Seaman, age 60, died from her injuries. Fred Seaman sustained serious injuries. Locaine had been at several gatherings drinking wine and initially believed her husband would drive her home, but drove herself after he left with their children. She told police she did not care because her children were not with her. She was arrested at the scene. In December 2010, a Somerset County grand jury indicted her on charges of aggravated manslaughter and assault by automobile. On November 27, 2012, a Somerset County jury convicted her of second-degree vehicular homicide and fourth-degree assault by auto. On February 14, 2013, Superior Court Judge Robert B. Reed sentenced Locaine to 3 years in state prison, citing mitigating factors including the welfare of her young children. She received credit for time served and began serving the sentence at Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women. She was released on parole June 12, 2015, after serving approximately 2 years and 4 months. The Somerset County Prosecutor's Office appealed the sentence as excessively lenient. In July 2016, the New Jersey Appellate Division ruled that the trial judge had not provided an adequate explanation for the below-guideline sentence and ordered re-review. In September 2016, Judge Reed acknowledged error and indicated an additional 6 months should have been imposed. On January 13, 2017, Judge Reed ruled that no additional prison time was required, stating Locaine's conduct since release showed she was not a threat to society. Prosecutors appealed again. In February 2019, a different judge, Kevin Shanahan, resentenced Locaine to 5 years, but she remained free on bail pending further appeal. On July 22, 2020, the Appellate Division ruled that the 2019 resentencing was incorrect, rejected double jeopardy arguments, and ordered the case returned for a 4th sentencing. On September 17, 2020, Superior Court Judge Angela Borkowski sentenced Locaine to 8 years in state prison with a minimum mandatory term of 6 years, 9 months, and 22 days before parole eligibility. She received credit for the 2 years and 4 months already served on the original sentence. Locaine reported to Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. In 2022, she lost a state appellate challenge to the 8-year sentence and a federal appeal seeking reduction. The appellate court upheld the term, stating Locaine chose to drive with a back nearly 3 times the legal limit, ensuring harm, and that the sentence was just and fair. Locaine remained incarcerated until her parole eligibility date. She was released from custody on December 20, 2024, after serving a combined total of approximately 6.5 years across both prison terms. As of March 2026, Locaine, age 54, lives privately outside Princeton, New Jersey. She works the front desk at a doctor's office, is a few credits short of an associate degree, started during incarceration, attends a local Presbyterian church, and has remained sober since the 2010 crash. She has issued no further statements altering the facts of her conviction or the documented sequence of events. The Seaman family received a civil insurance settlement. No additional criminal charges were filed against Locane after the 2012 conviction. The case produced 4 separate sentencings by 3 judges over a decade of appeals, all stemming from the single June 27, 2010 crash that resulted in 1 death and 1 serious injury with verified back of 0.23% and speed of 53 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone. Aisling Tucker Moore Reed was born October 15, 1989 in Los Gatos, California, and grew up in Oregon. She co-authored the young adult novels Amber House in 2012 and Never Was in 2014 under the pen name Tucker Reed and narrated their audiobooks. She worked as a reporter for the Grants Pass Daily Courier until she quit in spring 2016. Under the stage name Wynn Reed, she played the lead role of Valerie Faust in the independent horror film From the Dark, released November 20, 2020. The character is a young tour guide at an Oregon forest lodge whose going-away party turns deadly when she commits a killing. On July 26, 2016 at approximately 3:40 p.m., Moore Reed was inside her grandmother Lore Moore's home at 7201 Thompson Creek Road in Applegate, Oregon. The family, including her mother Kelly Moore and grandmother Lore Moore, was meeting with a notary to sign property conveyance documents amid an ongoing dispute over ownership and inheritance rights to the property. Shane Patrick Moore, the 63-year-old maternal uncle, arrived at the door and asked what was going on. A conversation occurred between Shane Moore and Kelly Moore. Moore Reed held a cell phone in one hand and a handgun in the other. She recorded video footage on the phone. Within 10 to 20 seconds of Shane Moore's arrival at the doorway, she announced he is coming into the house, picked up the gun, and fired a single shot into his chest. Shane Moore exclaimed, "Ow, God damn it." Moore Reed immediately cried out, "I didn't mean to shoot him in the chest." She continued recording the aftermath, which captured panic and confusion among those present. Shane Moore died at the scene from the gunshot wound. Moore Reed was arrested the same day, July 26, 2016, and indicted July 29, 2016, on charges of first-degree manslaughter and second-degree manslaughter. She posted bail of $200,000 in August 2016 and was released pending trial. She filed a notice of intent to rely on the justification defense of self-defense, defense of others, and defense of premises under Oregon law, citing a pending fourth-degree assault charge against Shane Moore from a September 2015 incident in which she was the victim and independent witness. Statements that Shane Moore had made threats against her and her mother. While out on bail in 2018, Moore Reed auditioned for and was cast in From the Dark. She filmed her lead role as the woman who commits the on-screen killing under the stage name Wynn Reed. The production wrapped, and the film was completed before her legal proceedings concluded. On September 5, 2018, prosecutors added a second-degree murder charge after new evidence surfaced, specifically the cell phone video Moore Reed had recorded and turned over to her defense team in an attempt to support her self-defense claim. The video showed Shane Moore pacing outside the home with no threatening behavior toward anyone inside. Jackson County Deputy District Attorney Marco Baccato stated that viewing all facts in totality, including the video, the justification defense did not apply. Moore Reed remained out on bail during filming, but faced additional charges in January 2020 while briefly held at Jackson County Jail for supplying contraband and unlawful possession of heroin after the substance was found on her bunk during a search. Those drug charges were separate from the homicide case. On May 27, 2020, in Jackson County Circuit Court, Moore Reed pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter. The original charges of first-degree manslaughter, second-degree manslaughter, and second-degree murder were dropped under the plea agreement. Judge Tim Barnack sentenced her to 75 months in the custody of the Oregon Department of Corrections, followed by 3 years of post-prison supervision. At sentencing, Moore Reed stated she was very sorry for the pain she caused her family. The case gained nationwide attention due to the cell phone video evidence, the property inheritance dispute that triggered the confrontation, and the fact that Moore Reed had filmed and starred in From the Dark as a character who commits a killing while out on bail awaiting trial for the real shooting. Prosecutors argued the act was not justified self-defense but a reckless response during the family dispute over the Thompson Creek Road property. The defense maintained Moore Reed believed she and her mother faced imminent harm based on prior threats and the pending assault case. No other individuals were charged in the shooting. Moore Reed was incarcerated at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility in Wilsonville, Oregon. She filed a malpractice lawsuit against her defense attorney in January 2021, alleging inadequate representation that led to an involuntary plea. The suit was dismissed in May 2021. She served the 75-month sentence and was released in November 2024. The sequence of events began with a long-running family property dispute at Laura Moore's Applegate home, escalated on July 26, 2016, when Shane Moore arrived during the notary meeting, leading to the 10 to 20-second confrontation captured on Moore Reed's cell phone video. The immediate fatal chest wound, the same-day arrest, the August 2016 bail, the 2018 filming of From the Dark, the September 2018 edition of the murder charge based on the video, the January 2020 jail drug charges, the May 27, 2020 guilty plea to second-degree manslaughter, the 75-month sentence, and the November 2024 release. All evidence centered on the cell phone footage recorded by Moore Reed herself, the autopsy confirming the single chest gunshot as cause of death, witness statements about the property conveyance dispute, and the prior assault complaint against the victim. The film From the Dark under Win Reed depicted a parallel scenario of a woman turning violent at a social gathering in an Oregon setting and was released after the plea and sentencing. Moore Reed's prior work as a reporter and novelist under Tucker Reed formed the background to her acting pursuit in the horror genre. The self-defense filing referenced the 2015 assault case and reported threats, but was rejected after the video demonstrated non-threatening behavior by Shane Moore at the doorway. No appeals altered the manslaughter conviction or sentence. The property at 7201 Thompson Creek Road remained central to the motive as documented in the notary meeting and family arguments. The grandmother Laura Moore, the mother Kelly Moore, and other family members were present inside during the shooting. Moore Reed's statements on the video immediately after firing included the admission, "I didn't mean to shoot him in the chest," while the recording continued through the chaos. The district attorney's office emphasized that the totality of evidence, including the video, outweighed the self-defense claims despite the prior threats and assault history. The independent horror film's production occurred entirely while Moore Reed was free on the $200,000 bond from the initial manslaughter indictment. The lead role required her to portray a character who kills in a sudden violent act, mirroring the real events prosecutors later used against her in media coverage. All charges stemmed from the single July 26, 2016 gunshot. The 75-month term, with 3 years post-prison supervision, was imposed after the plea dropped the murder count. Moore Reed's release in November 2024 followed completion of the custodial portion of the sentence at Coffee Creek. No further criminal charges related to the homicide have been filed. The case concluded with the manslaughter conviction tied directly to the cell phone video, the property dispute, and the rejection of the justification defense. Moore Reed's acting credit in From the Dark as Win Reed stands as the final public project before incarceration. The full timeline from the spring 2016 resignation as reporter through the July 2016 shooting, the 2018 film production, the 2018 murder charge addition, the 2020 plea and sentence, and the 2024 release contains every verified element from arrest records, court filings, video evidence, and sentencing. Amanda Perry Hayes was born in 1973 and pursued acting with minor background roles in the television series The Sopranos and the film The Stepford Wives. She married Grant Ruffin Hayes, a musician who performed in nightclubs and bars, and had previously maintained a relationship with Laura Jean Ackerson beginning around 2007 in Raleigh, North Carolina. Grant and Laura had 2 sons together. Grant later moved to St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands for his music career. Laura followed with the children but returned to North Carolina when one son required medical treatment. Grant met Amanda on St. John. They married in Las Vegas, relocated first to New York City and then to Raleigh, where they had a daughter. And this triggered a bitter custody battle over Grant's 2 sons with Laura. Laura, a 27-year-old Michigan native who had moved to Raleigh after high school and worked as a waitress, fought for access to the children while Grant and Amanda presented as a family unit. The disputes escalated into jealousy and control issues. On July 13, 2011, Laura drove to the Hayes apartment in Raleigh to visit her sons. She left a voicemail for a friend stating she would stop by afterward, but never arrived and was never seen alive again. Prosecutors established that Laura was killed inside the apartment that day. Grant Hayes dismembered the body. On July 14, he purchased a reciprocating saw and heavy-duty cleanup supplies. The couple placed the remains in coolers, rented a U-Haul trailer, and drove more than 1,200 miles to the home of Amanda's sister, Karen Berry, in Richmond, Texas. During the visit, they inquired about alligators in nearby Oyster Creek and whether they could use a boat to fish. Amanda reportedly told her sister, "I hurt her. I hurt her bad." Grant purchased muriatic acid and chemical-resistant gloves in Texas. Video evidence captured these purchases. They attempted to dissolve portions of the body with the acid before loading the parts onto a boat and dumping them into Oyster Creek in the 4300 block of Skinner Lane, with the explicit hope that alligators would consume the remains. Laura's friend Siobhan Mathis filed a missing person report after she stopped responding to calls. Raleigh police searched her home, contacted associates, and learned of the U-Haul rental and trip to Texas. Investigator Major Robert Latour interviewed Karen Berry, whose statements about the couple's nervous behavior and questions about the creek prompted a search of Oyster Creek. Fort Bend County investigators and the Houston Police Dive Team, including members Mark Thorson and Brian Davis, searched the murky, alligator-infested waters. Portions of a human torso were found floating among vegetation. Over the following weeks, additional body parts were recovered, including the skull that was positively identified as Laura Jean Ackerson's. The discovery occurred 11 days after her disappearance. Phone records, witness statements, inconsistencies in the couple's accounts, the U-Haul rental, and the purchases of the saw, acid, and gloves built the case against them. Grant and Amanda Hayes were arrested and charged with first-degree murder on July 25, 2011. They were held without bond and pleaded not guilty. The couple was tried separately. Grant Hayes' trial began in August 2013 in Wake County. He admitted dismembering the corpse and participating in the cover-up, but denied killing Laura, claiming Amanda was responsible based on her statement to her sister. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder on September 16, 2013, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He later legally changed his surname to Hayes, and in a 2024 prison interview, maintained he did not commit the murder itself while acknowledging the dismemberment as indefensible. Amanda Hayes' trial began in January 2014. Her defense argued she had been manipulated and controlled by her husband and was not the primary actor in the killing. Evidence of her active participation in the transport, acid purchase, boat rental, and disposal was presented. The jury convicted her of second-degree murder on February 19, 2014. She was sentenced to 13 to 16 years in prison. Texas authorities then pursued charges for tampering with a human corpse. In 2018, Amanda faced trial in Fort Bend County. Prosecutors detailed the cutting up of the body in North Carolina, the transport across state lines in coolers to her sister's home, the use of muriatic acid in an attempt to destroy evidence, and the dumping from a boat into Oyster Creek specifically to feed the remains to alligators. On August 21, 2018, the jury convicted her of tampering with evidence involving a human corpse. Judge Maggie Jaramillo sentenced her to the maximum 20 years in prison, ordered to run consecutively after completion of the North Carolina term. Amanda Hayes served her North Carolina sentence until authorities transferred her to a Texas prison on August 19, 2024, to begin the additional 20-year term. Laura Ackerson's father filed a civil lawsuit against the couple in 2016, seeking damages for the loss of his daughter. The case drew national attention due to the custody-driven motive, the cross-state body disposal, and Amanda's prior minor acting connections that contrasted with the crime. Grant Hayes remains incarcerated in North Carolina, serving life without parole. Amanda Perry Hayes remains incarcerated in Texas with no realistic prospect of early release, given the consecutive sentences. The sequence of events began with the 2007 relationship between Grant and Laura, continued through the custody conflict after Grant's marriage to Amanda, culminated in the July 13, 2011 killing and immediate dismemberment in Raleigh, followed by the 1,200-mile drive, acid treatment, boat dumping. In Oyster Creek, the multi-week body recovery by dive teams, arrests on July 25, 2011, Grant's 2013 first-degree conviction and life sentence, Amanda's 2014 second-degree conviction and 13 to 16-year term, and her 2018 Texas tampering conviction with 20 consecutive years. Evidence included the reciprocating saw purchase the day after disappearance, muriatic acid and glove acquisitions captured on video, the sisters' direct statements about the boat request and Amanda's admission of harm, phone data placing Laura at the apartment with no exit, and the sequential discovery of torso fragments, then the identified skull in the creek. No other individuals were charged. The disposal effort spanned multiple days in Texas after the initial cover-up in North Carolina. Laura Ackerson's remains were recovered in pieces over several weeks in the alligator-infested Oyster Creek, confirming the intent behind the boat trip and acid use. The custody battle records showed Laura's devastation at limited access to her sons, while Grant and Amanda's new family unit fueled the resentment that prosecutors tied directly to the planning and execution. Amanda Hayes' acting background, limited to background parts, surfaced repeatedly in media coverage but held no bearing on the legal outcomes. Grant Hayes' music career in the Virgin Islands and Raleigh clubs formed the initial connection points with both women. The U-Haul trailer rental provided the physical means for transporting the coolers undetected across state lines. The boat rental at the sisters' property enabled the final water disposal under the alligator rationale. Dive team searches noted the challenges of the muddy, vegetated creek where even small body parts could disperse. The skull identification provided the definitive link back to Laura Jean Ackerson. All charges stemmed from the single July 13, 2011 incident in the Raleigh apartment, followed by the coordinated multi-state concealment. Amanda Hayes' transfer to Texas custody in 2024 finalized the consecutive service structure, ensuring the full combined term. The investigation linked every element from the missing person voicemail through the purchase receipts, witness interviews, and physical recovery to the convictions. Laura Ackerson was 27 at the time of death. Amanda Perry Hayes was 41 at her North Carolina conviction. The sentences remain active, with both defendants incarcerated separately. Elizabeth Ann Biseglia was born November 7, 1947 in New York City, the third of 6 children in a strict Catholic Italian-American family. She graduated from Maria Regina High School in 1965, attended the College of Mount St. Vincent, and earned a degree in English. In 1969, she married Daniel Thomas Broderick III, a Cornell medical student she met at a dance. The couple moved to San Diego in 1973 after Dan completed medical school and switched to law school at Harvard. Dan earned a medical degree and a law degree, then specialized in medical malpractice litigation. By the early 1980s, he operated a highly profitable practice, grossing millions, annually served as president of the San Diego County Bar Association, and owned multiple properties, including a mansion in the Marston Hills neighborhood. Betty and Dan had 4 children: Kimberly, born 1970, Lee, born 1971, Daniel Jr., born 1973, and Rhett, born 1976. Betty managed the household full-time, raised the children, and supported Dan through his education and early career. In 1983, Dan hired 21-year-old Linda Kolkena as a receptionist at his law firm. An affair began shortly afterward. Betty suspected the relationship by 1984 and confronted Dan repeatedly. Dan denied it until February 1985, when he moved out of the family home. Betty retained custody of the children initially, but Dan filed for divorce in 1985 and waged a 3-year legal battle over asset support and custody. During the proceedings, Betty received temporary alimony of $5,000 per month, but Dan controlled the bulk of the marital estate valued at several $1,000,000. Betty alleged Dan hid assets and used his legal influence to manipulate court outcomes. The divorce finalized in 1989 with Dan awarded primary custody and the family home. Betty received a lump sum settlement and reduced support throughout the separation, and divorced Betty engaged in repeated acts of harassment. She drove her vehicle into Dan's front door on 2 occasions, in 1986 and 1988. She left hundreds of obscene voicemail messages, including repeated statements that she hoped Dan and Linda would die. She entered Dan's home multiple times, smeared feces on walls and furniture, and destroyed property. Dan obtained multiple restraining orders. Betty was arrested twice for vandalism and once for violating a restraining order, but served no jail time. In April 1989, Dan married Linda Kolkina in a ceremony Betty learned about through the children. On November 5, 1989, at approximately 5:30 a.m. 2 days before her 42nd birthday, Betty took a key belonging to her daughter, entered Dan and Linda's Marston Hills home through a side door, and proceeded upstairs to the master bedroom. Dan, age 44, and Linda, age 28, were asleep in bed. Betty carried a 5-shot .38 caliber revolver she had purchased earlier. She fired 5 rounds into the bed. Linda was struck twice, once in the head and once in the chest, and died instantly. Dan was struck once in the chest while reaching for the telephone and died from the wound. 2 additional bullets struck the wall and a nightstand. Betty left the residence, drove away, and later telephoned her daughter Kimberly, stating she had killed Dan and Linda. She turned herself in to police that afternoon and was booked into San Diego County Jail without bail. San Diego police recovered the revolver at the scene, along with Betty's fingerprints and the key she had used. Betty gave statements admitting she entered the home and fired the shots, but claimed she intended only to confront Dan and that the shooting was not premeditated. The San Diego County District Attorney charged her with 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances and 1 count of illegal use of a firearm. Her first trial began in October 1990 before Judge Thomas J. Whelan. Betty testified that years of alleged emotional abuse and financial manipulation by Dan had driven her to the act. The defense argued for manslaughter or temporary insanity. The jury deadlocked 10-2 in favor of murder, resulting in a mistrial. Declared on November 21, 1990, the retrial began December 11, 1991, in the same courtroom with the same judge, prosecutor, and defense attorney. Prosecutors presented evidence of premeditation, including Betty's prior threats, vandalism, and statements to friends that she wanted Dan dead. They introduced the voicemail tapes and testimony from Dan's colleagues about the harassment campaign. The defense again presented Betty's claims of psychological abuse and called experts who diagnosed histrionic and narcissistic personality disorders. On December 1991, the jury convicted Betty of 2 counts of second-degree murder. On February 8, 1992, Judge Whelan sentenced her to 2 consecutive terms of 15 years to life plus 2 years for the firearm enhancement, for a total term of 32 years to life. Betty was immediately transferred to the California Institution for Women in Chino, where she has remained continuously since. Betty became eligible for parole in 2010 after serving the minimum term. At her January 2010 hearing before the Board of Parole Hearings, she expressed no remorse, stating Dan and Linda deserved what they received and that she remained angry. The board denied parole and imposed the maximum 15-year denial period. Her second hearing occurred in January 2017. Betty again showed no remorse, described herself as a political prisoner, and claimed the system had wronged her. The board denied parole and set the next hearing for 2032, when she will be 84 years old. As of March 2026, Betty Broderick, inmate W42477, remains incarcerated at the California Institution for Women with no additional criminal charges filed since 1989 and no successful appeals altering her conviction or sentence. Her 4 children remain publicly divided, with some advocating for her release and others supporting continued incarceration. The documented sequence consists of the November 5, 1989 shooting with 5 rounds from a .38 revolver, resulting in 2 deaths, immediate confession 1990, mistrial 1991, second-degree murder conviction 1992, 2 years to life sentence, and repeated parole denials in 2010 and 2017, with the next eligibility date fixed at 2032. Shannon Guess Richardson was born Shannon Rogers on August 31, 1977, in Bowie County, Texas. She grew up in a working-class family in the New Boston area and pursued acting under the name Shannon Guess, and later Shannon Guest after marriage. Her credits consisted exclusively of background and minor roles, including an uncredited zombie extra in one episode of AMC's The Walking Dead in 2010, a student in an episode of The Vampire Diaries in 2009, a small part in Franklin and Bash, and appearances in the films The Blind Side in 2009, The Change Up in 2011, and The Girl Next Door in 2010. She never secured a speaking role or recurring part and supported herself through temporary work while raising children. Richardson married U.S. Army veteran and mechanic Nathan Richardson on October 8, 2011. By 2013, she had 5 children from prior relationships and was pregnant with her 6th. The marriage deteriorated rapidly over custody disputes, finances, and separation. Nathan filed for divorce in June 2013. During the dissolution, Richardson began acquiring materials to manufacture ricin, a Schedule I biological toxin derived from castor beans with no known antidote. Using email accounts, credit cards, and PayPal opened in Nathan's name, she ordered castor beans, lye syringes, needles, and other processing supplies online in April and May 2013. She processed the beans at the couple's home in New Boston, Texas, by crushing them, mixing with solvents, and extracting the ricin protein into a powdered form suitable for dissemination. On May 20, 2013, Richardson mailed 3 envelopes from the New Boston Post Office. The first, addressed to President Barack Obama in Washington, D.C., contained ricin powder, and the typed message, "What's in this letter is nothing compared to what I've got in store for you, Mr. President." The second, addressed to New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, contained ricin and threats tied to gun control legislation. The third, addressed to Mark Glaze, Executive Director of Mayors Against Illegal Guns in Washington, D.C., contained ricin and similar threats warning of violence if gun legislation advanced. All 3 letters were intercepted at federal mail facilities before delivery and tested positive for ricin by the FBI laboratory. No one was physically harmed. Immediately after mailing, Richardson contacted local police and the FBI, claiming she had discovered evidence that Nathan had sent the letters. She provided fabricated details implicating him and positioned herself as a concerned witness. Investigators traced the online purchases of castor beans and supplies directly to accounts and devices under her control. Digital forensics recovered deleted emails, search history for ricin production, and order confirmations on her computer. Handwriting analysis on the envelopes and internal notes matched Richardson's writing. Chemical analysis confirmed the ricin matched the batch produced from the purchased beans. Her attempt to frame Nathan collapsed within days. On June 7, 2013, FBI agents arrested Richardson at the New Boston residence. She was 35 years old and approximately 8 months pregnant. A federal grand jury in the Eastern District of Texas indicted her on June 27, 2013, on charges including threatening the president, mailing threatening communications, and possessing a biological toxin for use as a weapon under 18 U.S.C. 175. While in pretrial custody at a Texas county jail under federal contract, she gave birth prematurely to a son named Brody on August 1, 2013. Nathan received temporary custody of the infant. Richardson was evaluated and ruled competent to stand trial in August 2013. On November 22, 2013, Richardson entered a plea agreement. On December 10, 2013, she pleaded guilty before U.S. Magistrate Judge Caroline M. Craven to 1 count of possession of a toxin for use as a weapon. In exchange, the government dismissed the threat-related counts and capped her exposure at 18 years. Sentencing occurred on July 16, 2014, before U.S. District Judge Michael H. Schneider in Texarkana. Prosecutors presented evidence of premeditated production mailing and the framing attempt. Richardson addressed the court, stating she never intended harm and acted out of emotional turmoil from the divorce. Judge Schneider imposed the maximum term under the plea deal: 216 months imprisonment, 18 years plus 5 years, supervised release, a $100 special assessment, and $367,222.29 in restitution to the government for investigation and response costs. She received credit for time served since arrest. Richardson began serving the sentence in the Federal Bureau of Prisons system. She was designated to the Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas, where she remains as of March 2026. In 2025, she filed a motion for sentence reduction under retroactive amendments to federal sentencing guidelines for first-time offenders without prior criminal history. On September 24, 2025, U.S. District Judge Robert W. Schroeder III denied the request, citing the violent nature of the offense, use of a biological weapon, and the premeditated framing of her husband. The Bureau of Prisons website lists her projected release date as December 29, 2028, after application of good conduct time and other credits. There is no parole in the federal system. She has no additional criminal convictions. Her 6 children were raised by family members and Nathan Richardson following the divorce finalized in 2014. Her acting career ended with the arrest and conviction. The case produced no further charges or appeals altering the 18-year term. The documented sequence consists of online acquisition of castor beans in April-May 2013, home production of rice, and mailing of 3 toxin-laden threat letters on May 20, 2013, immediate false accusation against her husband, arrest on June 7, 2013, guilty plea on December 10, 2013, and sentencing to 216 months on July 16, 2014, with ongoing incarceration at Carswell and confirmed denial of reduction in September 2025. Felicia Pearson was born May 18, 1980, in Baltimore, Maryland. She entered the world 3 months premature, weighing 3 pounds, and was immediately placed into foster care after testing positive for drugs. She grew up in East Baltimore's most violent neighborhoods with no stable family structure, and began dealing drugs as a teenager. On April 27, 1995, at age 14, Pearson shot and killed 15-year-old Okia Toomer during a street confrontation in Northeast Baltimore. Pearson claimed Toomer attacked her with a lead baseball bat and that she fired in self-defense. Police arrested her at the scene. She was charged as an adult with second-degree murder. In 1996, a Baltimore City Circuit Court jury convicted her. The judge imposed 2 consecutive 8-year terms for a total of 16 years at the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women in Jessup. Pearson served 5.5 years. While incarcerated, she earned her GED. A local drug dealer she called Uncle Arnold Lonely visited, regularly sent money, and repeatedly urged her to study and stay out of further trouble. Lonely was murdered while Pearson was still in prison. She was released in 2000 at age 20 and returned to Baltimore, determined to avoid reincarceration, but with a felony record that blocked legitimate employment. She resumed street-level drug dealing. In 2004, Pearson was at a Baltimore nightclub when actor Michael K. Williams, who played Omar Little on HBO's The Wire, approached her. Williams saw her mannerisms and street presence and nicknamed her Snoop after the cartoon character Snoopy. He invited her to the set, introduced her to creators David Simon and Ed Burns, and arranged auditions. Producers cast her as Snoop, a fictionalized version of herself, a stone-faced female enforcer, first in the Barksdale organization and then in Marlo Stanfield's crew across seasons 3, 4, and 5 from 2004 to 2008. On-screen, Pearson's character purchased a nail gun for executions, spoke in clipped Baltimore slang, and carried out killings with detached efficiency. Critics, including Stephen King, described the performance as one of the most realistic and terrifying female villains in television history. The role drew immediate controversy. Okia Toomer's family publicly objected that a convicted murderer was now being paid to portray a murderer on national television, calling it a reward for her past crime. Pearson responded in interviews that the part represented a legitimate second chance and that she drew directly from her own experiences to inform the character. In 2007, Pearson published the memoir Grace After Midnight Co., written with David Ritz. The book detailed her premature birth foster care years, street involvement, the 1995 shooting prison time get achievement, and the internal conflict between survival instincts and the desire for change. After The Wire ended in 2008, Pearson returned to Baltimore and struggled to find steady work. On March 10, 2011, federal and local authorities executed a pre-dawn raid as part of a 5-month DIA investigation into a heroin and marijuana trafficking ring. Pearson and 60 others were arrested at multiple locations, including her downtown apartment. She faced federal charges of conspiracy to distribute heroin and aiding and abetting. Wiretap evidence captured her discussing transactions. Pearson remained in custody for 1 month, then posted $50,000 bail and spent the remainder of pretrial time under electronic monitoring at home. On August 8, 2011, the day before trial, she pleaded guilty in Baltimore federal court. The judge sentenced her to 7 years in prison, but suspended all but the 5 months already served and imposed 3 years of supervised probation. She received credit for time served and was released immediately after sentencing. Pearson continued acting in independent films and guest roles, including appearances in The Family Plan in 2023 and other low-budget projects. She worked as an anti-violence educator, speaking to at-risk youth in Baltimore schools and supported organizations, including the Stay Strong Foundation. She also pursued music, releasing limited rap tracks under the Snoop name. As of March 2026, at age 45, Pearson maintains a private residence in Baltimore with no new criminal charges on record since 2011. She has made occasional public appearances at fan events and panel discussions tied to the Wire retrospectives, but has issued no statements retracting any details of her 1995 conviction, her 2011 guilty plea, or the documented facts of both cases. The 1995 second-degree murder conviction stands as a completed state matter with the full sentence served. The 2011 federal heroin conspiracy conviction resulted in a suspended term and probation that concluded without violation. Pearson's documented trajectory consists of 1 juvenile adult murder conviction followed by release, 1 acting breakthrough, 1 subsequent drug conspiracy conviction followed by release, and continued work in film and community speaking with no further arrests or convictions. Patricia Campbell Hearst was born February 20, 1954 in San Francisco, California, the third of 5 daughters of Randolph Apperson Hearst and Catherine Campbell Hearst, and granddaughter of publishing magnate William Randolph Hearst. She attended private schools in Los Angeles, San Mateo, Crystal Springs, and Monterey, and enrolled at the University of California, Berkeley in fall 1972. By 1973, she shared a small apartment at 2603 Benvenue Street, apartment 4 in Berkeley, with fiance Stephen Weed, a former high school math teacher. On February 4, 1974, shortly after 9 p.m., 5 members of the Symbionese Liberation Army, Donald DeFreeze, known as Sink, Patricia Soltysik, known as Ms. Moon, Nancy Ling, Perry Camilla Hall, and William Wolfe, burst into the apartment armed with guns. They beat Weed, unconscious tied him, and a neighbor who attempted intervention then dragged Hearst blindfolded into the trunk of a stolen car and fled. The SLA, a domestic terrorist group formed in fall 1973 by DeFreeze, an escaped convict from Soledad prison, along with Berkeley radicals, espoused an incoherent ideology mixing Marxism, anarchism, and black nationalism, aimed at starting a guerrilla war to overthrow the United States government, which they labeled a fascist capitalist state. Prior to the kidnapping on November 6, 1973, SLA members assassinated Oakland School Superintendent Marcus Foster with cyanide-laced bullets for his alleged support of student identification cards. 3 days after abducting Hearst, the SLA sent a communique to a Berkeley radio station declaring her a prisoner of war and demanding the Hearst family distribute food to the poor as ransom. On February 12, 1974, a tape recording of Hearst was broadcast in which she urged her parents to comply. The family created the People in Need program, distributing $2 million worth of food to thousands in California, but the SLA rejected it as inadequate and demanded $6 million more, which was not fully met. Hearst was confined, blindfolded, and gagged in a small closet for the first 57 days, subjected to repeated physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, including rape by DeFries and Wolf, as she later testified in court. She was forced to participate in political indoctrination sessions. On April 3, 1974, the SLA released a tape in which Hearst announced she had voluntarily joined the group, taken the nom de guerre Tanya, after Tamara Bunk, a comrade of Che Guevara, denounced her parents as pigs and rejected her former life. 12 days later, on April 15, 1974, Hearst participated in the armed robbery of the Hibernia Bank Sunset District branch at 1450 Noriega Street in San Francisco. Surveillance cameras recorded her wielding an M1 carbine, providing armed cover, yelling commands, including "I'm Tanya," "Up against the wall, motherfuckers," while DeFries, Soltysik, and others stole $10,692, wounding 2 bystanders. The group fled to Los Angeles. On May 16, 1974, Hearst, Bill Harris, and Emily Harris attempted to steal ammunition from Mel's sporting goods store in Inglewood. When a clerk confronted Bill Harris, Hearst fired more than 30 rounds from an automatic rifle in the getaway van to cover their escape. Immediately afterward, they carjacked and kidnapped 19-year-old Thomas Matthews, stealing his van. The next day, May 17, 1974, Los Angeles police surrounded an SLA safe house in Compton, initiated a 6-hour shootout, firing over 5,000 rounds and using tear gas that started a fire, killing 6 SLA members: DeFries, Soltysik, Perry Hall, Wolf, and others. Hearst and the Harrises escaped. The surviving SLA members, including Hearst, continued operations. On April 21, 1975, the group robbed the Crocker National Bank in Carmichael, California, with Hearst driving the getaway car. During the robbery, Emily Harris shot and killed bank customer Myrna Opsahl, a 42-year-old mother of 4. Bait money from this robbery was later recovered in the apartment where Hearst was arrested. On September 18, 1975, FBI agents, acting on surveillance of associates, arrested Hearst, Bill Harris, Emily Harris, and Wendy Yoshimura in a San Francisco apartment. Hearst was armed at the time of arrest and, upon booking, identified her occupation as urban guerrilla. Federal authorities charged her solely with the April 15, 1974 Hibernia Bank armed robbery under 18 USC 2113-A-D and using a firearm in a felony under 18 USC 924-C. Her federal trial opened January 15, 1976 in San Francisco before Judge Oliver J. Carter. Defense attorney F. Lee Bailey argued Hearst acted under duress and brainwashing after prolonged isolation abuse and indoctrination, citing expert testimony on coercive persuasion and Stockholm Syndrome. Hearst testified she feared for her life, had been raped multiple times, and participated only to survive. Prosecutors presented bank surveillance photos and video showing her active armed participation with no coercion visible at the scene, and introduced tapes where she praised the SLA and condemned her family. The 7-man, 5-woman jury deliberated 12 hours before convicting her on both counts. March 20, 1976. Judge William H. Orrick Jr. sentenced her to 7 years on the robbery count and 2 years on the firearm count to run concurrently. Hearst served 22 months in federal prison, including pretrial detention time credited, before President Jimmy Carter commuted the sentence on January 29, 1979, to the time already served, citing the extraordinary circumstances of her kidnapping and captivity. She was released from the Federal Correctional Institution, Dublin, California. Bill and Emily Harris separately pleaded guilty to kidnapping Hearst, and each served 8 years. State charges in California for the Mel's incident, kidnapping of Matthews, and involvement in the Carmichael robbery were not pursued to conviction after the federal case. On January 20, 2001, President Bill Clinton issued a full pardon to Hearst on his final day in office, restoring all civil rights. Hearst married former San Francisco police officer Bernard Shaw, who had served as her bodyguard during bail in 1979. The couple had 2 daughters and lived privately. In 1982, she published the memoir Every Secret Thing Co., written with Alvin Moscow, describing her captivity and actions. She took small acting roles in John Waters' films Cry Baby in 1990, Serial Mom in 1994, and Cecil B. Demented in 2000. Hearst has bred and shown French bulldogs, with several winning at the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. As of 2026, at age 72, she maintains a low profile with no further criminal record or public statements altering her account. The Symbionese Liberation Army ceased to exist after the arrests and deaths of its core members. Hearst's documented participation in multiple armed robberies, shootings, and a kidnapping, while claiming coercion under disputed psychological conditions, resulted in a single federal conviction followed by executive clemency and pardon. Jennifer Shaw was born October 4, 1973, in Salt Lake City, Utah, to a large, close-knit family of Hawaiian and Tongan descent. After college, she married Sheriff Shaw, a special teams coordinator for the University of Utah football program. The couple raised two sons, Sheriff Jr. and Omar, and for years, Shaw focused on family life in Utah. In 2020, she joined the cast of Bravo's The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City as an original cast member and appeared in the first 3 seasons. She presented herself on screen as a wealthy, successful businesswoman with an extravagant wardrobe, lavish parties, and a fiery personality that generated high ratings for the series. From at least 2012 until her arrest in March 2021, Shaw operated as an integral leader of a nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme known internally as the Business Opportunity Scheme. The operation targeted thousands of victims across the United States, the majority of whom were elderly individuals over age 55. Shaw and her co-conspirators, including First Assistant Stuart Smith, generated and sold lead lists containing contact information for susceptible consumers who had expressed interest in starting online businesses. These leads were routed to multiple sales floors where telemarketers used false representations to sell worthless business coaching services, coaching packages, and internet business opportunities that promised financial independence and online success. In reality, the services consisted of generic templates, recycled websites, and scripted advice with no value and no follow-through support. Victims were contacted repeatedly, sometimes daily, until their bank accounts were drained, credit cards maxed out, and retirement savings depleted. The scheme generated millions in revenue that flowed through shell companies' offshore accounts and accounts held in the names of nominees to conceal ownership. Shaw directed key aspects of the operation. She oversaw the purchase and sale of lead lists, approved scripts for sales calls, instructed subordinates to delete electronic records and text messages after transactions, and required cash payments to avoid traceable records. When federal authorities, including the Federal Trade Commission, began investigating similar schemes in the industry, Shaw escalated concealment measures by moving portions of the operation overseas, directing employees to lie to investigators, and placing luxury assets in other names. She used proceeds to fund a lifestyle that included leasing a 9,420 square foot mansion in Park City, Utah, which she referred to as the Shaw Ski Chalet, renting an apartment in Midtown Manhattan, and leasing a Porsche Panamera. Court records document that she continued the fraud even after learning that dozens of co-conspirators had been arrested, pleaded guilty, or been convicted at trial. On March 30, 2021, FBI agents arrested Shaw and Stuart Smith in Utah. The arrest occurred while production cameras for The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City Season 2 were filming nearby as Shaw prepared to travel with cast members. A federal indictment in the Southern District of New York charged Shaw and Smith with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud in connection with telemarketing and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. Prosecutors alleged the scheme victimized thousands, many of them elderly and vulnerable, and that Shaw was among the most culpable participants. Smith later pleaded guilty to both counts in November 2021. Shaw initially entered a not guilty plea and publicly maintained her innocence on the show, including using the tagline, "The only thing I'm guilty of is being Shaw amazing" for Season 2. She sold Justice for Jen merchandise and continued filming while the case proceeded. On July 11, 2022, just days before the scheduled trial, Shaw changed her plea and pleaded guilty in federal court in New York to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud in connection with telemarketing. As part of the agreement, the money laundering count was dismissed. She admitted that from 2012 through 2021, she knowingly participated in the scheme by facilitating the sale of leads to sales operations that defrauded victims through false promises of online business success. Shaw agreed to forfeit $6.5 million in assets and to pay restitution up to $9.5 million to identified victims. Sentencing occurred on January 6, 2023, before United States District Judge Sidney H. Stein. Prosecutors sought a sentence near the top of the guidelines range, citing Shah's leadership role, the scale of harm to thousands of victims, and her post-arrest attempts to profit from the charges. Defense counsel requested leniency, citing family responsibilities, and claimed charitable work. In her allocution, Shah stated she was sorry for the pain caused to innocent people, and that with proper medication, she now understood the harm she inflicted. Judge Stein sentenced her to 78 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. He also ordered forfeiture of $6.5 million, 30 luxury items, and 78 counterfeit luxury items, plus restitution exceeding $6.6 million. The sentence was below the prosecutor's recommendation of 120 months, but above the defense request. Shah reported to the federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas, on February 17, 2023. While incarcerated, she participated in prison programs and began making restitution payments. Bureau of Prisons records show multiple reductions to her projected release date due to good conduct time and program credits. Her original projected release had been in 2028. On November 21, 2025, the Bureau of Prisons advanced her departure date to December 10, 2025. She was released on that date after serving 33 months, approximately half of the imposed term. She transitioned directly into a community confinement program, equivalent to home confinement or a halfway house. As of March 2026, Shah has completed her custodial sentence and remains on supervised release while continuing restitution payments. She has issued no new public statements altering her guilty plea or the facts established in court. The case resulted in convictions or guilty pleas for all charged co-conspirators, with sentences ranging from several months to longer terms for higher-level participants. Stuart Smith received a sentence consistent with his cooperation. No additional charges were filed against Shah after her plea. The Department of Justice documented the scheme as one of the largest telemarketing fraud operations prosecuted in the Southern District of New York during that period, with verified losses in the millions and ongoing victim restitution proceedings. Shah's documented role as a leader who directed lead sales concealment efforts and continued operations despite enforcement actions produced a single federal conviction for wire fraud conspiracy, followed by a 78-month sentence, of which she served 33 months before early release under standard Bureau of Prisons calculations.